The Infernal Diatribe. The first book of the Satanic Bible is not an attempt to blaspheme as much as it is a statement of what might be termed diabolical indignation. The devil has been attacked by the men of God relentlessly and without reservation. Never has there been an opportunity, short of fiction, for the dark prince to speak out in the same manner as the spokesman of the Lord of the righteous. The pulpit pounders of the past have been free to define good and evil as they see fit, and have gladly smashed into oblivion any who disagree with their lies, both verbally and, at times, physically. Their talk of charity when applied to his infernal majesty becomes an empty sham, and most unfairly, too, considering the obvious fact that without their satanic foe their very religions would collapse. How sad that the allegorical personage most responsible for the success of spiritual religions is shown the least amount of charity and the most consistent abuse, and by those who most unctuously preach the rules of fair play. For all the centuries of shouting down the devil has received, he has never shouted back at his detractors. He has remained the gentleman at all times, while those he supports rant and rave. He has shown himself to be a model of deportment, but now he feels it is time to shout back. He has decided it is finally time to receive his due. Now the ponderous rule books of hypocrisy are no longer needed. In order to relearn the law of the jungle, the small, slim diatribe will do. Each verse is an inferno. Each word is a tongue of fire. The flames of hell burn fierce and purify. Read on and learn along. The Book of Satan. I want in this arid wilderness of steel and stone I raise up my voice that you may hear. To the east and to the west I beckon. To the north and to the south I show the sign, proclaiming death to the weakling, wealth to the strong. 2. Open your eyes that you may see, though men of melted minds, and listen to me, ye bewildered millions. 3. For I stand forth to challenge the wisdom of the world, to interrogate the laws of man and of God. 4. I request reason for your golden rule and ask the why and wherefore of your 10 commandments. 5. Before none of your printed idols do I bend in acquiescence, and he who saith thou shall to me is my mortal foe. 6. I dip my forefinger in the watery blood of your impotent mad Redeemer, and write over his torn brow, the true Prince of Evil, the King of Slaves. 7. No hoary falsehood shall be of truth to me. No stifling dogma shall encramp my pen. 8. I break away from all conventions that do not lead to my earthly success and happiness. 9. I raise up in stern invasion the standard of the strong. 10. I gaze into the glassy eye of your fearsome Jehovah, and plucked him by the beard. I uplift the broad axe, and split open his worm-eaten skull. 11. I blast out the ghastly contents of philosophically whited sepulchres and laugh with sardonic wrath. The Book of Satan. I 1. Behold the crucifix. What does it symbolize? Pallid incompetence hanging on a tree. 2. I question all things. As I stand before the festering hand-varnished facades of your haughtiest moral dogmas, I write their own thin letters of blazing scorn. Lo and behold, all this is fraud. 3. Gather around me, O ye death defiant, and the earth itself shall be thine, to have and to hold. For too long the dead hand has been permitted to sterilize living thought. 5. Too long right and wrong, good and evil have been inverted by false prophets. 6. No creed must be accepted upon authority of a divine nature. Religions must be put to the question. No moral dogma must be taken for granted, no standard of measurement deified. There is nothing inherently sacred about moral codes. Like the wood and idols of long ago, they are the work of human hands, and what man has made, man can destroy. 7. He that is slow to believe anything and everything is of great understanding, for belief in one false principle is the beginning of all unwisdom. 8. The chief duty of every new age is to upraise new men to determine its liberties, to lead it towards material success, to rend the rusty padlocks and chains of dead custom that always prevent healthy expansion. Theories and ideas that may have meant life and hope and freedom for our ancestors may now mean destruction, slavery, and dishonor to us. 9. As environments change, no human ideal standeth sure. 10. Whenever, therefore, the light has built unto itself the throne, let it be assailed without pity and without regret, for under the domination of an inconvenient falsehood, no one can prosper. 11. Let established sophisms be dethroned, rooted out, burnt, and destroyed, for they are a standing menace to all true nobility of thought and action. 12. Whatever alleged truth is proven by results to be but an empty fiction, let it be unceremoniously flung into the outer darkness, among the dead gods, dead empires, dead philosophies, and other useless slumber and wreckage. 13. The most dangerous of all enthroned light is the holy, the sanctified, the privileged light. The light everyone believes to be a model truth. It is the fruitful mother of all other popular errors and delusions. It is a hydra-headed tree of unreason with 1,000 roots. It is a social cancer. 14. The light that is known to be a lie is half eradicated, but the light that even intelligent persons accept as fact, the light that has been inculcated in a little child at its mother's meat, is more dangerous to contend against than a creeping pestilence. 15. Popular lies have ever been the most potent enemies of personal liberty. There is only one way to deal with them: cut them out to the very core, just as cancers exterminate them root and branch. Annihilate them, or they will us. The Book of Satan. 1. Love one another, it has been said, is the supreme law, but what power made it so? Upon what rational authority does the gospel of love rest? Why should I not hate mine enemies? If I love them, does that not place me at their mercy? 2. Is it natural for enemies to do good unto each other? And what is good? 3. Can the torn and bloody victim love the blood-splashed jaws that rend him limb from limb? 4. Are we not all predatory animals by instinct? If humans ceased wholly from preying upon each other, could they continue to exist? 5. Is not lust and carnal desire the more truthful term to describe love when applied to the continuance of the race? Is not the love of the fawning scriptures simply a euphemism for sexual activity, or was the great teacher a glorifier of eunuchs? 6. Love your enemies and do good to them that hate and use you. Is this not the despicable philosophy of the spaniel that rolls on its back when kicked? 7. Hate your enemies with a whole heart, and if a man smite you on one cheek, smash him on the other, smite him hip and thigh, for self-preservation is the highest law. 8. He who turns the other cheek is a cowardly dog. 9. Give blow for blow, scorn for scorn, doom for doom, with compound interest liberally added thereunto. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, eye for fold, 100-fold. Make yourself a terror to your adversary, and when he goeth his way, he will possess much additional wisdom to ruminate over. Thus shall you make yourself respected in all the walks of life, and your spirit, your immortal spirit, shall live, not in an intangible paradise, but in the brains and sinews of those whose respect you have gained. The Book of Satan, IV 1. Life is the great indulgence, death the great abstinence. Therefore, make the most of life, here and now. 2. There is no heaven of glory bright, and no hell where sinners roast. Here and now is our day of torment. Here and now is our day of joy. Here and now is our opportunity. Choose ye this day, this hour, for no redeemer like it. 3. Say unto thine own heart, I am mine own redeemer. 4. Stop the way of them that would persecute you. Let those who devise thine undoing be hurled back to confusion and infamy. Let them be as chaff before the cyclone, and after they have fallen rejoice in thine own salvation. 5. Then all thy bones shall say pridefully, Who is like unto me? Have I not been too strong for mine adversaries? Have I not delivered myself by mine own brain band? The Book of Satan, V 1. Blessed are the strong, for they shall possess the earth. Cursed are the weak, for they shall inherit the yoke. 2. Blessed are the powerful, for they shall be reverenced among men. Cursed are the feeble, for they shall be blotted out. 3. Blessed are the bold, for they shall be masters of the world. Cursed are the righteously humble, for they shall be trodden under cloven hoofs. 4. Blessed are the victorious, for victory is the basis of right. Cursed are the vanquished, for they shall be vassals forever. 5. Blessed are the iron-handed, for the unfit shall flee before them. Cursed are the poor in spirit, for they shall be spat upon. 6. Blessed are the death-defiant, for their days shall be long in the land. Cursed are the gazers toward a richer life beyond the grave, for they shall perish amidst plenty. 7. Blessed are the destroyers of false hope, for they are the true messiahs. Cursed are the God-odorers, for they shall be shorn sheep. 8. Blessed are the valiant, for they shall obtain great treasure. Cursed are the believers in good and evil, for they are frightened by shadows. 9. Blessed are those that believe in what is best for them, for never shall their minds be terrorized. Cursed are the lambs of God, for they shall be black whiter than snow. 10. Blessed is the man who has a sprinkling of enemies, for they shall make him a hero. Cursed is he who doeth good unto others, who sneered upon him in return, for he shall be despised. 11. Blessed are the mighty-minded, for they shall ride the whirlwinds. Cursed are they who teach lies for truth, and truth for lies, for they are an abomination. 12. Thrice cursed are the weak, whose insecurity makes them vile, for they shall serve and suffer. 13. The angel of self-deceit is camped in the souls of the righteous. The eternal flame of power through joy dwelleth within the flesh of Satanist. Air. The Book of Lucifer. The Enlightenment. The Roman god, Lucifer, was the bearer of light, the spirit of the air, the personification of enlightenment. In Christian mythology he became synonymous with evil, which was only to have been expected from a religion whose very existence is perpetuated by clouded definitions and bogus values. It is time to set the record straight. False moralisms and occult inaccuracies must be corrected. Entertaining as they might be, most stories and plays about devil worship must be recognized as the obsolete absurdities they are. It has been said, the truth will make men free. The truth alone has never set anyone free. It is only doubt which will bring mental emancipation. Without the wonderful element of doubt, the doorway through which truth passes would be tightly shut, impervious to the most strenuous poundings of 1,000 Lucifers. How understandable that Holy Scripture should refer to the infernal monarch as the father of lies, a magnificent example of character inversion. If one is to believe this theological accusation that the devil represents falsehood, then it surely must be concurred that it was he, not God, that established all spiritual religions and who wrote all of the Holy Bibles. When one doubt is followed by another, the bubble, grown large from long accumulated fallacies, threatens to burst. For those who already doubt supposed truths, this book is revelation. Then Lucifer will have risen. Now is the time for doubt. The bubble of falsehood is bursting, and its sound is the roar of the world. WNTED. God. Dead or alive. It is a popular misconception that the Satanist does not believe in God. The concept of God as interpreted by man has been so varied throughout the ages that the Satanist simply accepts the definition which suits him best. Man has always created his gods, rather than his gods creating him. God is, to some, benign, to others, terrifying. To the Satanist, God, by whatever name he is called, or by no name at all, is seen as the balancing factor in nature, and not as being concerned with suffering. This powerful force which permeates and balances the universe is far too impersonal to care about the happiness or misery of flesh and blood creatures on this ball of dirt upon which we lie. Anyone who thinks of Satan as evil should consider all the men, women, children, and animals who have died because it was God's will. Certainly the person grieving the untimely loss of a loved one would much rather have their loved one with them than in God's hands. Instead, they are unctuously consoled by their clergyman who says, "It was God's will, my dear, or he is in God's hands now, my son." Such phrases have been a convenient way for religionists to condone or excuse the mercilessness of God. But if God is in complete control, and as benign as he is supposed to be, why does he allow these things to happen? too long. Have religionists been falling back on their Bibles and rule books to prove or disprove, justify, condemn, or interpret? The Satanist realizes that man, and the action and reaction of the universe, is responsible for everything, and doesn't mislead himself into thinking that someone cares. No longer will we sit back and accept fate without doing anything about it, just because it says so in chapter such and such, Psalm so, and that's that. The Satanist knows that praying does absolutely no good. In fact, it actually lessens the chance of success for the devoutly religious. Too often sit back complacently and pray for a situation which, if they were to do something about it on their own, could be accomplished much quicker. The Satanist shuns terms such as hope and prayer as they are indicative of apprehension. If we hope and pray for something to come about, we will not act in a positive way which will make it happen. The Satanist, realizing that anything he gets is of his own doing, takes command of the situation instead of praying to God for it to happen. Positive thinking and positive action add up to results. Just as the Satanist does not pray to God for assistance, he does not pray for forgiveness for his wrongdoings. In other religions, when one commits a wrong, he either prays to God for forgiveness, or confesses to an intermediary and asks him to pray to God for forgiveness for his sins. The Satanist knows that praying does no good. Confessing to another human being like himself accomplishes even less, and is, furthermore, degrading. When a Satanist commits a wrong, he realizes that it is natural to make a mistake, and if he is truly sorry about what he has done, he will learn from it and take care not to do the same thing again. If he is not honestly sorry about what he has done, and knows he will do the same thing over and over, he has no business confessing and asking forgiveness in the first place. But this is exactly what happens. People confess their sins so that they can clear their consciences and be free to go out and sin again, usually the same sin, and be free to go out and sin again, usually the same sin. There are many different interpretations of God, in the usual sense of the word, as there are types of people. The images run from a belief in a God who is some fake sort of universal cosmic mind to an anthropomorphic deity with a long white beard and sandals who keeps track of every action of each individual. Even within the confines of a given religion, the personal interpretations of God differ greatly. Some religions actually go so far as to label anyone who belongs to a religious sect other than their own a heretic, even though the overall doctrines and impressions of godliness are nearly the same. For example, the Catholics believe that the Protestants are doomed to hell simply because they do not belong to the Catholic Church. In the same way, many splinter groups of the Christian faith, such as the evangelical or revivalist churches, believe that the Catholics are heathens who worship graven images. Christ is depicted in the image that is most psychologically open to the individual worshipping him, and yet the Christians criticize heathens for the worship of graven images, and the Jews have always been given the devil's name. Even though the God in all of these religions is basically the same, each regards the way chosen by the others as reprehensible, and to top it all, religionists actually pray for one another. they have scorned for the brothers of the right-hand path because their religions carry different labels, and somehow this animosity must be released. What better way than through prayer? What a simperingly polite way of saying, "I hate your guts," is the thinly disguised device known as praying for your enemy. Praying for one's own enemy is nothing more than bargain basement anger, and of a decidedly shoddy and inferior quality. If there has been so much violent discrepancy as to the proper way in which to worship God, how many different interpretations of God can there be, and who is right? All devout white lighters are concerned with pleasing God so that they might have the pearly gates opened for them. Then they died. Nevertheless, if a man has not lived his life in accordance with the regulations of his faith, he can at the last minute call a clergyman to his deathbed for a final absolution. The priest or minister will then come running on the double to make everything right with God and see to it that his passport to the heavenly realm is in order. The Yazidis, a set of devil worshippers, take a different viewpoint. They believe that God is all-powerful, but also all-forgiving, and so accordingly feel that it is the devil whom they must please, as he is the one who rules their lives while here on earth. They believe so strongly that God will forgive all of their sins once they have been given the last rites, that they feel no need to concern themselves with the opinion God may hold of them while they live. With all of the contradictions in the Christian scriptures, many people currently cannot rationally accept Christianity the way it has been practiced in the past. Great numbers of people are beginning to doubt the existence of God, in the established Christian sense of the word. So, they have taken to calling themselves Christian atheists. True, the Christian Bible is a mass of contradictions, but what could be more contradictory than the term Christian atheist? If prominent leaders of the Christian faith are rejecting the past interpretations of God, how then can their followers be expected to adhere to previous religious tradition? With all the debates about whether or not God is dead, if he isn't, he had better have Medicare. The God you save made yourself. All religions of a spiritual nature are inventions of man. He has created an entire system of gods with nothing more than his carnal brain. Just because he has an ego and cannot accept it, he has to externalize it into some great spiritual device which he calls God. God can do all the things man is forbidden to do, such as kill people, perform miracles, to gratify his will, control without any apparent responsibility, etc. If man needs such a God and recognizes that God, then he is worshipping an entity that a human being invented. Therefore, he is worshipping by proxy the man that invented God. Is it not more sensible to worship a God that he, himself, has created, in accordance with his own emotional needs, one that best represents the very carnal and physical being that has the idea power to invent a God? In the first place, if man insists on externalizing his true self in the form of God, then why fear his true self? In fearing God, why praise his true self? In praising God, why remain externalized from God in order to engage in ritual and religious ceremony in his name? Man needs ritual and dogma, but no law states that an externalized God is necessary in order to engage in ritual and ceremony performed in a God's name. Could it be that when he closes the gap between himself and his God, he sees the demon of pride creeping forth, that very embodiment of Lucifer appearing in his midst? He no longer can view himself in two parts, the carnal and the spiritual, but sees them merge as one, and then to his abysmal horror discovers that they only the carnal, and always were. Then he either hates himself to death day by day, or rejoices that he is what he is. If he hates himself, he searches out new and more complex spiritual paths of enlightenment, in hopes that he may split himself up again in his quest for stronger and more externalized gods to scourge his poor miserable shell. If he accepts himself, but recognizes that ritual and ceremony are the important devices that his invented religions have utilized to sustain his faith in the light, then it is the same form of ritual that will sustain his faith in the truth, the primitive pageantry that will give his awareness of his own majestic being added substance. When all religious faith in life has waned, it is because man has become closer to himself and farther from God, closer to the devil. If this is what the devil represents, and a man lives his life in the devil's faith, with the sinews of Satan moving in his flesh, then he either escapes from the cackles and carpings of the righteous, or stands proudly in his secret places of the earth and manipulates the folly-ridden masses through his own satanic might, until that day when he may come forth in splendor proclaiming, "I am a Satanist. Bow down, for I am the highest embodiment of human life." Some evidence of the new Satanic age. The 7 deadly sins of the Christian Church are greed, pride, envy, anger, gluttony, lust, and sloth. Satanism advocates indulging in each of these sins, as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. The Satanist knows there is nothing wrong with being greedy, as it only means that he wants more than he already has. Envy means to look with favor upon the possessions of others, and to be desirous of obtaining similar things for oneself. Envy and greed are the motivating forces of ambition, and without ambition, very little of any importance would be accomplished. Gluttony is simply eating more than you need to keep yourself alive. When you have overeaten to the point of obesity, another sin, pride, will motivate you to regain an appearance that will renew your self-respect. Anyone who buys an article of clothing for a purpose other than covering his body and protecting it from the elements is guilty of pride. Satanists often encounter scoffers who maintain that labels are not necessary. It must be pointed out to these destroyers of labels that one or many articles they themselves are not necessary to keep them warm. There is not a person on this earth who is completely devoid of ornamentation. The Satanist points out that any ornamentation of the scoffer's body shows that he, too, is guilty of pride. Regardless of how verbose the cynic may be in his intellectual description of how free he is still wearing the elements of pride. Being reluctant to get up in the morning is to be guilty of sloth, and if you lie in bed long enough you may find yourself committing yet another sin, lust. To have the faintest stirring of sexual desire is to be guilty of lust. In order to ensure the propagation of humanity, nature made lust the second most powerful instinct, the first being self-preservation. Realizing this, the Christian Church made fornication the original sin. In this way they make sure no one would escape sin. Your very state of being is as a result of sin, the original sin. The strongest instinct in every living thing is self-preservation, which brings us to the last of the 7 deadly sins, anger. Is it not our instinct for self-preservation that is aroused when someone harms us, when we become angry enough to protect ourselves from further attack? A Satanist practices the motto, if a man smite thee on one cheek, smash him on the other. Let no wrong go unredressed. Be as a lion in the path, be dangerous even in defeat. Since man's natural instincts lead him to sin, all men are sinners, and all sinners go to hell. If everyone goes to hell, then you will meet all your friends there. Heaven must be populated with some rather strange creatures if they all limped for what to go to a place where they can strum harps for eternity. Times have changed. Religious leaders no longer preach that all our natural actions are sinful. We no longer think sex is dirty, or that taking pride in ourselves is shameful, or that wanting something someone else has is vicious. Of course not. Times have changed. If you want proof of this, just look at how liberal churches have become. Why, they're practicing all the things that you preach. Satanists hear these and similar statements all the time, and they agree wholeheartedly. But if the world has changed so much, why continue to grasp at the threads of a dying faith? If many religions are denying their own scriptures because they are out of date, and are preaching the philosophies of Satanism, why not call it by its rightful name, Satanism? Certainly it would be far less hypocritical. In recent years there has been an attempt to humanize the spiritual concept of Christianity. This has manifested itself in the most obvious non-spiritual means. Masses which had been said in Latin are now said in native languages, which only succeeds in making the nonsense easier to understand, and at the same time robs the ceremony of the esoteric nature which is consistent with the tenets of the dogma. It is much simpler to obtain an emotional reaction using words and phrases that cannot be understood than it is with statements which even the simplest mind will question when hearing them in an understandable language. If priests and ministers were to have used the devices to fill their churches 100 years ago that they use today, they would have been charged with heresy, called devils, oft times persecuted, but certainly excommunicated without hesitation. The religionaries wailed, "We must keep up with the times," forgetting that, due to limiting factors and deeply ingrained laws of white light religions, there can never be sufficient change to meet the needs of man. Past religions have always represented the spiritual nature of man, with little or no concern for his carnal or mundane needs. They have considered this life but transitory, and the flesh merely a shell, physical pleasure trivial, and pain a worthwhile preparation for the kingdom of God. How well the utter hypocrisy comes forth when the righteous make the change in their religion to keep up with man's natural change. The only way that Christianity can ever completely serve the needs of man is to become as Satanism is now. It has become necessary for a new religion, based on man's natural instincts, to come forth. They have named it. It is called Satanism. It is that power condemned that has caused the religious controversy over birth control measures, a disgruntled admission that sexual activity, for fun, is here to stay. The Infernal Diatribe. The first book of the Satanic Bible is not an attempt to blaspheme as much as it is a statement of what might be termed diabolical indignation. The devil has been attacked by the men of God relentlessly and without reservation. Never has there been an opportunity, short of fiction, for the dark prince to speak out in the same manner as the spokesman of the Lord of the righteous. The pulpit pounders of the past have been free to define good and evil as they see fit, and have gladly smashed into oblivion any who disagree with their lies, both verbally and, at times, physically. Their talk of charity when applied to his infernal majesty becomes an empty sham, and most unfairly, too, considering the obvious fact that without their satanic foe their very religions would collapse. How sad that the allegorical personage most responsible for the success of spiritual religions is shown the least amount of charity and the most consistent abuse, and by those who most unctuously preach the rules of